Hey guys, so today you and I are going to talk about how to date a programmer. So let's get into it. Well, this is it's a very interesting question. Technically, this is on topic because hey, this is about programming, but it's not really about coding. This is about life, I suppose. But I'll give it a bash anyway. So I suppose that this is the sort of question that either I should ask one of my coworkers who she is actually fortunate enough to be in a relationship where she is a programmer and her boyfriend is a programmer, which is a pretty sweet, I can imagine that being a pretty sweet deal. And myself, I've never dated a programmer, but since I have dated, and I am my girlfriend probably could answer this better than anybody else. I can give you some things that most of my coworkers have faced with their spouses or their significant others. So when it comes with dating a programmer, and the first thing I will just want to touch on here, which is I hope one of the obvious things, is that there is this idea that programmers are different somehow. It seems like, how do you date one? Just like any person, guys. Most of the time a programmer is just another person. It's an individual, an engineer type of a person. And some of them are, this is true for pretty much every human being. Of course, you're always going to be able to find someone who is like extremely introvert or extremely extrovert or insecure or not insecure. There's so many different types of people, right? It doesn't have to be a programmer. But that's just the first thing. Just don't make any assumption, because they are people just as everybody else. Just as doctors are people, policemen are people. It's just a human being, just as any other person. What's nice about dating a programmer is usually that, well, if they have the social graces, they might, some of them and quite a lot of them might be fairly insecure in themselves as human beings. So dating one you might actually have to. It depends on you, of course, if you're a man or a woman, depending on the sort of role that you take in the relationship. But you might have to support be emotionally supportive in a different fashion, and at the very least have to deal with that they space out sometimes. That's something that I do. If you date a programmer who has a genuine interest for what they're doing, if they treat programming as more as just a job, it's very likely that this is something that you will not necessarily be able to share with them when you date them. You will simply have to accept that they might feel this need to sit at their computer and tap away and do coding. And you should, of course, make sure that you are, depending on the type of relationship you have, just make sure that they don't prioritize you less just because they feel this need to work on something or do something. You can think of coding as very easily, for a lot of programmers, programming is not just a job, it's a hobby as well. And just as any hobby, you have to make sure that people, just accept that this is a hobby, and that as long as it's being handled in moderation and you feel that you're getting what you emotionally need to be happy within the relationship, that, then it should be fine. But if they're spending so much time with their computer that you feel neglected, then have a discussion about that, talk about it. Communication is key in any relationship. And apart from that, it's not that different from dating anybody else. It's actually, what is kind of nice about it is it's a similar type of thing that's very nice with usually talking to people who have I'm not saying necessarily an education, but people who are a little bit learned and have gotten a little bit further in life than most people. That programmers are usually, they're fairly intelligent, because you require a fair bit of intelligence to get anywhere in programming. So you can usually have very interesting in-depth discussions, and quite a lot of them are very open to having deeper conversations about things. It's, they can of course talk about, I have worked with programmers who are complete sports addicts, and all they want to talk about is football and things like that, and that's also fine. But quite a lot of them are open to having a little bit of deeper conversations, which can be, at least I can think, is fairly attractive. It's an attractive trait, at least for me, because I get bored shitless by talking about the boring everyday stuff, like what happened on Jeopardy or what happened on, I don't know, whatever show. usually I'm not so interested in that, but a programmer is usually the sort of person where you can have a really interesting discussion about some philosophical topics or things that are happening out there in the world. So usually it's a very rewarding experience talking, just having a coffee with a programmer, as long as they of course have the social graces to behave themselves and are fairly normal. So what I want you to take away from this is that dating a programmer is pretty much like dating any person, like even a sports person, somebody usually with a job and a personal interest, where it just so happens that their job very often becomes their side hobby or the thing that they do when they go home as well. And quite a lot of programmers don't do these things either. They're just normal people like everybody else. And one of I would say one of the benefits of dating a programmer is that they make a fairly good living, and although some of them might have like emotional issues, but I'm sure that quite a lot of you are aware of that there's quite a lot of people, regardless of profession, that has this issue. But at the very least, they usually have. It's very mentally rewarding, at least in my experience, to talk to programmers, and just as any person who has a little bit, they are a little bit learned. I think that's very nice. It's very stimulating to talk to somebody who can who can manage a conversation about higher things or philosophical topics or political topics and express rational, well thought out scenarios about different things in our world. So yeah, that's pretty much it. Have a great day.